This is the only time in the history of the four-engine Lockheed Super Constellation, military designation EC-121, call sign Batcat 31, that the airplane lost all four engines at one time at 19,000 feet, and was eventually able to make an emergency landing at Da Nang, Vietnam, saving the airplane and the loss of the 20 crew members. The impossible happened on 21 June, 1969, during the height of the Vietnam War. The airplane was given the nickname the Da Nang Glider. The following short video is the story of a Lockheed Super Constellation, known as a EC-121 or Batcat aircraft, that suffered a catastrophic loss of all four engines in flight during the Vietnam War, and was able to save the crew and airplane by the help of God and the skill of the United States Air Force flight crew. The airplane and the emergency were given the nickname the Da Nang Glider. The following information is factual as to how the event unfolded. Much of the information about the Batcat mission was highly classified. I would like to dedicate this video to the 22 airmen from the 553rd Reconnaissance Wing that were killed during two aircraft crashes while on a combat mission. God rest their souls. The Constellation is a propeller-driven four-engine airliner built by Lockheed Corporation between 1943 and 1959 in Burbank, California.
The Super Constellation was designed to meet this need. Huge and powerful, yet precise and finely balanced as a jeweled watch. To make a 66-ton machine ride the air as delicately and surely as any bird is no easy job. Planners, policymakers, men of courage and vision said, "Here is your airplane, the best there is."
Lockheed built 856 numerous planes, all with the same triple tail and dolphin-shaped fuselage. Most were powered by four 18 cylinders, Ryder 3350 duplex Cyclone engines. The Constellation was used as a civil airliner, and produced both for the Navy and Air Force as transport, electronics, and airborne early warning and control aircraft. A short history of the 553rd Reconnaissance Wing known as Batcat. The operation's name was to be called Operation Igloo White, and was assigned the nation's highest priority by the Department of Defense.
Welcome to Operation Igloo White, a groundbreaking technological endeavor during the Vietnam War. From 1968 to 1973, the US military deployed a sophisticated network of sensors, acoustic, seismic, and magnetic, designed to monitor enemy movements. This was not just a tale of conflict, but a story of innovation and electronic espionage. Airdropped into hostile territory, these sensors acted as the ears on the ground, detecting vibrations from troop movements and the rumble of trucks. Linked to the Infiltration Surveillance Center in Thailand, data was analyzed in real time, directing precision bombings with chilling accuracy. But the jungle was a harsh mistress. Monsoons, dense foliage, and savvy enemy tactics like using decoys and developing new trails often outsmarted this high-tech net. Despite its challenges, Operation Igloo White was a pioneering step into the future of warfare, foreshadowing today's digital battlefields. It showed the power and the pitfalls of relying on technology in war.
Igloo White was comprised of three major elements, one of which was the 553rd Reconnaissance Wing, known as Batcat. It became operational in late 1967. The Igloo White concept was to create an electronic fence that would interrupt and disrupt the flow of supplies from North Vietnam down the Ho Chi Minh Trail to the Viet Cong insurgents in South Vietnam. The aircraft were EC-121 Constellations, stationed at Korat Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand. The other two elements were at Task Force Alpha, stationed at NKP Air Base in Thailand. An Infiltration Service Center, ISC, would receive the data. The ISC interpreted the sensor data and passed target information to combat commanders, who would then send attack aircraft out to destroy the target. The electronic fence concept involved using several different types of sensors, delivered along the Ho Chi Minh Trail by Navy, Air Force, and Army Special Forces, dropped from F-4 Phantoms, CH-3 helicopters, and modified SB-2 Neptune submarine hunter-killer aircraft. The sensors were designed to drive into the ground, but leave the antenna exposed. The antennas were made to look like a small tree or bush, to hide them from the enemy. Combat reconnaissance missions began on November 25, 1967. Combat operations were flown using 25 EC-121's aircraft of the 30 aircraft converted. These missions normally required the aircraft to be on station for 8 hours. Including transit times to and from the station, an average flight was typically about 10.5 hours. Normal crew complement was 17 to 18 people, comprised of 2 pilots, 2 flight engineers, 2 navigators, 2 radio operators, 1 electronic warfare officer, 2 radio maintenance technicians RMTs, 2 combat information control information officers CHICOs, and 4 to 5 combat information monitors. During the time the 553rd Combat Reconnaissance Wing was active, there were always 3 aircraft on different stations 24/7. 11 different orbits were flown, not at the same time. On June 21, 1969, Batcat Crew 31 was scheduled for a standard combat mission. The aircraft was Lockheed Super Constellation, model EC-121. After a normal takeoff and climb to altitude, the airplane was flown out to the orbit area. After arrival at the assigned orbit area, the airplane was placed in cruise condition for a planned 8 hours on station. As was normal practice, one pilot, either the aircraft commander or the co-pilot, would be in the left cockpit seat. The right seat was occupied by one of the navigators. One of the 2 flight engineers would be at the flight engineer station. The off-duty pilot, navigator, and flight engineer would rest until they switched positions with the on-duty crew members. As the aircraft took its normal orbit, the pilot in the left seat was First Lieutenant Ezzell, and the right seat was occupied by First Lieutenant Hardy, one of the navigators for the mission, and the flight engineer was Sergeant Welch. This mission was flown on the blue orbit near Khe Sanh, at an altitude of 19,000 feet. Khe Sanh is on the northwestern part of Vietnam, not too far south from the DMZ, and a little east of the Vietnam border with Laos. Shortly after assuming the assigned orbit, all 4 engines stopped. An important point to understand is that the Lockheed Super Constellation required hydraulic pressure from an operating engine for the flight controls to operate. With all 4 engines stopped, there was no hydraulic pressure, and the controls were essentially frozen. With all the engines stopped, the aircraft began to decelerate quickly, nosing over, with the left wing dropping. Ezzell said it was like driving in a fast car, and someone slammed on the brakes. The airplane rapidly decelerated and became deadly quiet. The only thing I could hear was the whistling of the wind. Ezzell immediately looked at the flight engineer and said, "What the hell did you do?" Ezzell tried to correct for the unusual attitude, but the controls would not move because of a lack of hydraulic pressure. Ezzell's first reaction was to grab the hydraulic release lever, just to the side of his right leg, and pulled it up to disengage the hydraulic system, and allow for manual flying of the aircraft through the cable system. Now I was flying the airplane without any hydraulic assist, and it was like trying to steer a large truck, without any power steering. Ezzell's concerns were to keep the wings level and to maintain control, while letting the aircraft continue in a gradual descent, so the airplane would not stall, and go out of control or a spin.
Out of control.
B-17 out of control at 3 o'clock. Come on, you guys, get out of that plane. Bail out. There's one, he come out of the bomb bay. Yeah, I see him. There's a tail gunner coming out. Watch out for Spider.
Colonel January was laying down in the bunk immediately behind the flight deck, as he was off duty when the incident began. Ezzell now had the aircraft stabilized, and headed for the coast, but still with all 4 engines stopped. Colonel January entered the cockpit and switched places with Lieutenant Ezzell, while Lieutenant Hardy, the navigator, vacated the right seat, and Lieutenant Ezzell took over as co-pilot, handling the radios, rescue communications, and keeping the back-end crew updated as to what was happening. As Colonel January entered the flight deck, the first visible indication of the problem was that all 4 feather switch indicators were bright red. Lockheed designed the Super Constellation so that the automatic feather controls could only feather one single propeller at a time. Impossible for all 4 propellers to feather at once. It is important to know that feathering a propeller means rotating the propeller blades about 90 degrees, so each blade is streamlined with the wind, which gives minimum drag. If the propeller does not feather on an engine giving little or no power, The propeller will windmill, which creates substantial amounts of drag, possibly putting the aircraft out of control. The other possibility was that a prop overspeed, or runaway prop, causing the propeller to break off, destroying the airplane. Any of these two situations would have meant a certain disaster for the entire crew of 20. With Colonel January now flying the airplane, the flight engineer initiated the standard engine start procedure. Starting engine number 3 first, then number 4, then number 2, and number 1, in that order. Number 3 engine started without incident, giving the electrical power needed for communications with rescue and other assistance agencies. Lieutenant Ezzell now sent out the distress call.
Mayday, 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 this is Batcat 3-1, broadcasting on card channel. Mayday, 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 Batcat 3-1, we have lost all 4 engines. I repeat, we have lost all 4 engines. Mayday, mayday, mayday.
As the flight crew was working, trying to get the engines restarted and stable power, Ezzell rang the bell, meaning to prepare for bailout. This preparation involved putting on their parachute over their survival vest, destroying sensitive material, and opening the rear cabin door that would be used for bailing out. Meanwhile, number 4 engine was then started and gained full power. Then the number 3 propeller returned to the feather position. When the number 3 engine was started again and gained full power, number 4 propeller returned to the feather position. This sequence repeated numerous times. The number 2 engine was started, then the number 1 engine, and both were left at low power to provide stable electrical and hydraulic systems. To our pleasant surprise, neither number 2 nor number 1 propeller returned to the feather position for the rest of the flight. While the cockpit crew was fully involved in making every effort to achieve stable power, the back-end crew were preparing to bail out. The crew suffered the only injury of the trip, when Airman First Class Bob Finley, acting jump master, opened the rear door and was hit in the head by the door as it popped open, only suffering a slight cut. The door jammed only part way open, when it slammed in on its track. As the engines were now restarted, Ezzell notified the crew that we were heading out to open waters, and there was a possibility that we might have to ditch the airplane. So, everybody had to put on their water wings. Now the back-end crew had to take off all their survival equipment and parachute, put on their water wings, and then put all their equipment back on. By now open water had been reached, and there were rescue aircraft flying alongside. Now Colonel January headed the airplane toward Da Nang, the nearest air base located about 100 miles away. As power was reduced to lose altitude to land, the number of feathering incidents with the number 3 and 4 propellers had greatly reduced. As Da Nang came into view, an overhead circling approach was made to achieve the final goal. The aircraft and crew were now on the ground safely, and all 4 engines were operating before engine shutdown. Ezzell says, as far as I know, there was never any incident with any model of the Lockheed Super Constellation before or after, where all 4 propellers feathered in flight, as they did on June 21, 1969. After the mission, the crew was taken to the Da Nang Officers Club for many rounds of adult beverages. Later that day the crew was returned to Korat by another Batcat aircraft, sent to Da Nang to ferry the crew home. For the next few months, while the EC-121 remained at Da Nang, quite a bit of effort was expended to find out just what had caused the once-in-a-lifetime in-flight emergency. Maintenance technicians from the 553rd Reconnaissance Wing flown in from Korat, and the Lockheed research engineer, who originally designed the Constellation propeller feathering system in 1946, all reviewed the problem. Even with all the expertise available, the exact reason for all 4 propellers feathering was never identified for certain. Because of the inability to positively identify the cause of the feathering, many components were replaced. With all the items replaced, some additional steps were taken before the test flights began. The auto-feathering system was temporarily bypassed, along with other safety measures were applied. Several high-speed ground runs were made at Da Nang, with no problems. Next, The first test flight was 2 hours in length and flew around the Da Nang Air Base. On the second test flight, the airplane was returned to Korat during a 4-hour flight. 8 more test flights were conducted out of Korat, for a total test flight duration of 24 hours. On September 16, 1969, the airplane returned to normal reconnaissance operations and was not involved with any other mishap. This video was made using information, photographs, and videos obtained mostly from the Batcat website, created by my friend Larry Weston, who is also a Batcat veteran. Larry has built a great site https://weston553.net/ that has a tremendous amount of information about our time as a Batcat, stationed at Korat, Thailand. I had the honor to have served as a Batcat from October 1968 to October 1969, as a pilot with the 553rd Reconnaissance Wing. I had many exciting hours, flying over 1,000 combat hours in the EC-121 with my fellow Batcat brothers, shutting down many engines, flying in all sorts of bad weather, avoiding mid-air collisions, watching the war below on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and many other experiences too numerous to detail. Only by the grace of God was I not on the EC-121. That crashed, taking off into a thunderstorm at the end of the runway, killing all 18 on board. I was the standby co-pilot that should have been on that flight, but because 2 senior pilots volunteered to take the flight to get their needed flight hours was I saved. But, by far, the most memorable flight was being the pilot in the left seat when all 4 engines stopped in flight. For that emergency, I was honored and awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. God bless all the Batcats that lost their lives while serving their country.